Here at VisualPolitik, we love talking about Asia, and you probably know that by now. And we like it because there are certain things that this region has that can contribute a lot to the improvement of our world. However, not everything is as good as it sounds. In Asia, while we can certainly see plenty of light, there are also lots of shadows. And the largest shadow is that without any doubt, the area has become a huge powder keg ready to blow. On the one hand, the area is spending more and more in weapons. In fact, it is expected that by 2020, the region will account for more than 30% of all of the world's military spending. And on top of that, it's also becoming a chessboard for geopolitics. China and India are big emergent powers, and with time they are demanding a larger and larger international influence. Putin's Russia has started to feel concerned by the Pacific, and, well, so has the United States. Meaning this area is extremely important. Now, on the other hand, there are many disagreements between the different countries in this region, and it seems that lately they have been looking for any reason to start a fight. We can find all kinds of conflicts here: economic, territorial, historical. I mean, China's conflict with Vietnam here, with Japan over there, and then there is India, the situation with Taiwan, and the problems between Japan and Russia, and that's not even considering the situation in Korea. I mean, the list just grows longer and longer. We don't talk about many of these, but today we're going to focus on the sleeping giant, and that's Japan.
The two nightmares of Japan.
Japan is the world's third largest economy, but despite that, this country has a modest role in international politics, and it's been that way for the last few decades. However, the situation is changing, particularly for two reasons: China and North Korea. First, there is the emergence of China as a superpower, but why does Japan care about that? Well, basically because the emergence of China has led to setbacks in Japan's regional influence. Further, both countries maintain a bitter conflict over a small archipelago known as the Senkaku Islands.
The Senkaku Islands are abandoned, but they are still a key area in the fishing industry. They hold large deposits of petrol and gas, and they are also strategic in sea trade.
Well, just take a look at this chart to see how the military budget of both countries has evolved in the last few years. It will give you a better understanding of Japan's concern about China's emergence. Second, and more recently, there is North Korea. Pyongyang, dear viewer, has been obsessed for the last 20 years about developing unconventional war capacities, these mainly being its nuclear capability. For now, North Korea has managed to create an atomic bomb of 30 kilotons, which is comparable to twice the bomb that was used on Hiroshima. They've also succeeded in making ballistic missiles which can reach not only South Korea, but also Japan.
In March 2017, North Korea launched 4 ballistic missiles in Japan's direction. It was successful, and 3 out of 4 of them reached Japanese territorial waters, less than 200 miles from the Japanese coast.
Well, all of this is producing a real psychosis in Japan. The Japanese government itself has started to conduct evacuation drills in the event of a hypothetical attack, and has even distributed a detailed guide to explain how Japanese citizens should respond to a North Korean nuclear attack. Tokyo says that people should have about 10 minutes to react, but that might be an overestimation.
A missile may not be detected as soon as it leaves the launch pad. Depending on the case, the warnings and alarms might only sound 4 or 5 minutes before a missile arrives.
With all of this going on, we shouldn't be surprised to find out that Japan is acquiring many nuclear shelters as well as equipment for purifying the air, which are designed to fight radiation as well as poisonous gas.
Shinzo Abe, the Japanese Prime Minister, has confirmed North Korea also has the ability to launch sarin gas missiles.
So, ignoring whether the North Korean threat is real or not, the reality is that China and North Korea are perceived as being significant threats by Tokyo. But before explaining how the country is planning to fight these threats, let's have a look at what has been the foundation of their defense policy in the last few decades.
Japan, a pacifist country.
As you all know, Japan was one of the countries that lost World War II. As a consequence of this defeat, the country had to establish a constitution in 1947, and that constitution is still in force today. In this constitution, it states that war and the use of force is not to be used unless in self-defense.
Aspiring sincerely to an international peace based on justice and order, the Japanese people forever renounce war as a sovereign right of the nation. In order to accomplish the aim of the preceding paragraph, land, sea, and air forces, as well as other war potential, will never be maintained. Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution.
This means that at first, the idea was that Japan couldn't even have an army. The country's protection was the responsibility of the US. However, the Korean War and the tensions suffered during the years of the Cold War changed everything. All of a sudden, both Tokyo as well as Washington understood it was essential to form a support force for the American army in case Japan needed defense. And that is how the Japanese self-defense forces were born. This is an army whose only possible purpose is defense. But one thing is true. Formally, the US still takes care of Japan's protection and keeps more than 40,000 soldiers deployed in the country, and also maintains some of its largest military bases in Japan. This is a force, by the way, that is co-financed by the government of Japan itself. We could even say that Japan is the largest spearhead of the US in Asia. However, the new threats Japan perceives in the region from China and North Korea have caused Japan to no longer be satisfied with this protection. So the big question is, how is Japan responding to these threats?
Abe's new diplomacy.
To begin with, the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has started an unusual diplomatic race to work against the growing influence of China. For now, he has managed to improve the country's relations with South Korea, to strengthen its bonds with the US, and even bridge the gap existing with Putin's Russia.
Japan maintains an intense dispute over the sovereignty of a small archipelago known as the Kuril Islands, which Russia claims is now under their sovereignty.
In fact, the diplomacy Abe has started is so intense that the country is now competing with China in Africa.
Japan and China compete for African markets.
And as a curious fact, Shinzo Abe was also the first international leader to meet with Trump in the famous residence the American president owns in Florida. It seems like after this encounter, Abe managed to win over the president and make him forget all the attacks made against Japan when he was still a candidate for the presidency. Because one thing is true, Trump complained quite a lot about Japan, but things can change.
We are committed to the security of Japan and all areas under its administrative control. The friendship between our two peoples runs very, very deep.
But, of course, diplomacy is not always enough.
Japan's rearming.
And so finally, we reach the key point. The Japanese self-defense forces are often thought of as some sort of small band of men, but really nothing is further from the truth. The Japanese army is larger than the army of France and the UK combined. Now, it is true that given their name, you may not think that they are important, but the abilities and capacity of this strange army is impressive. For many analysts, they are still the best army in all of Asia, although China certainly competes for that top spot. And look, Japan's investment in defense is quite low, at less than 1% of its GDP, but that is still a lot of money. Take a look at this. In 2016, Japan was the country with the 7th highest spending on defense. In 2017, the government will give the forces the largest budget in its history, more than 5 trillion yen, which is around $45 billion. And of course, such a quantity in such a small and, by the way, very well-trained army is enough for them to acquire some of the most modern systems available. For example, there's the F-35, the best American drones, the Izumo-class aircraft carriers, or even the new 5th-generation fighter jets, which Mitsubishi is developing.
Japan reveals the prototype of its last furtive fighters.
The thing is that since Abe became Prime Minister in 2012, he has had the clear idea of leaving behind the pacifist character set by the Japanese constitution. And this has happened. In 2014, the Chinese government decided to stop all restrictions on the export of warfare material with the goal of starting a new Japanese military industry. A bit later in 2015, Abe also led a reform so that the self-defense forces could operate abroad, and today they even have a military base in Djibouti. And of course, the military budget has increased again after many years of budget cuts. But not only this, they are even thinking about changing the constitution.
The radical military shift of Japan echoes the ghosts of World War II.
So now comes the point in the video where we ask what you think. Do you think Japan should leave its pacifism aside? Should Japan give in to Beijing? Which country seems like a better ally for you, Japan or China? Well, please leave your answers in the comments below and do click like if you enjoyed this video. Also, don't forget to check out our friends at ReconsiderMedia.com, the podcast where you can hear the voice of this video that isn't mine, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos every Monday and Thursday, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.